As an amateur photographer, and when I say amateur, I mean like hobbyist. I like to take pictures, and sometimes out of, 200 or 300 pictures, I'll have 5 or 6 that are just wow out of 200 or 300. So that's a pretty low percentage, but I take a lot of pictures to make sure that I'm going to get some wow pictures out of those pictures. But here's some of the stuff that I've noticed as a photographer. I've started watching some shows to get a little better feel for what is a great photo. One of those shows that I've started watching, I would have never seen myself watching if you just said to me, here's the name of a show you should start watching, I would have said, yeah, probably not so much. But it turns out that I've actually had a blast watching America's Next Top Model. The one we're watching right now is season 20, which I believe is the most recent, but I could be mistaken. But in watching America's Next Top Model, I find that there are, everyone on that particular season comes with baggage. They come with drama. They all have some kind of past something that causes them to view other people in the house, the other models, and the photographers, and the stylists, and the makeup artists, and the people who are setting the scene as the nemesis, the enemy. They see them all as out to get them. And I know that it's not just overdramatic, melodramatic models who have that issue. In fact, there are leaders that you know today. There are leaders, maybe the one in your mirror, that have the same problem. And that is your worldview drives so much about who you are, what you do, what you think, your opinions and your ideas. And that's what I want to talk about today. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. And if you haven't noticed in your own life that sometimes the way that you approach something means more than anything else in the circumstances. What I mean by that is when you go into a moment, you go into a relationship, you go into even a job interview, and you think before you get there, this person doesn't like me, they're going to be mean to me, they already have it out for me, the world is against me, then the way you're going to behave in response to something that hasn't happened is going to be an enormous indicator to the person that you're interviewing with. Now, I want you to pull back from that for a moment as a leader, because I find that those of us who are responsible for our own sales and marketing, we can fall into the same trap. It's really easy. My days in sales, selling advertising in the Yellow Pages, we used to have a phrase called, don't sell from your own pocket. Now, as long as we've owned our entertainment company and we've done audio, visual, and MC work for people all across the board, from schools to city organizations to weddings, you name it. In every one of those events, in every one of those sales close opportunities, that same concept has come up. Don't sell from your own pocket. You don't know how much money they have set aside for this. You don't have any idea what they've budgeted for that. But if my worldview is, I've always been a little short on cash, and I sell myself thinking this person is probably a little short on cash, then what I'm going to do is notch my price down until it's a price I would be comfortable paying for the service that I'm offering. Let that sink in for a minute. Until it's a price I would be comfortable paying for a service that I'm offering. That has nothing to do with the client. The client may be looking for something entirely different. And you can sabotage yourself in the success of your business or in your opportunities by selling from your own pocket. But we also realize that the same thing happens in a job interview. The kind of person that you would want to hire may be different than the kind of person that they would want to hire. And sometimes we find ourselves modifying our expressions, modifying our beliefs, modifying our opinions to kind of tamp them down, to mold them into, to shape them into what we think they think we should be. Leaders have the same challenge. In leadership, we often ask ourselves, well, what will make the crowd like us more? What will give us more influence? What will give us more opportunity? How do we get them to come to our side? Well, all of those are reasonable and responsible questions to ask. The challenge is when we project our own thoughts into the mix. Think about Bart Simpson is probably the best example ever. Do you remember in the Bart Simpson, the episode of The Simpsons where Bart actually had the chance, Homer, not Bart. Homer had a chance to buy a gift for his wife for her birthday. And he, knowing that she would reject it, bought her a bowling ball. She doesn't bowl. She never has bowled. She doesn't like bowling. She doesn't want to bowl. But she decided to take up bowling just to spite him because he bought a gift from his own thinking. Oh, it was a manipulative gift to begin with. He thought, if I buy this bowling ball, but she doesn't like bowling, I'll get a new bowling ball and then I'll buy her something else. But I still get to buy a new bowling ball. The reality was he was trying to manipulate her. But how often do we as leaders project our wants, our desires, our wishes on the group of people that we're leading or the audience that we're leading rather than simply asking the question, what do you want? When we allow our worldview, our perceptions, our belief systems, our thoughts, our history, our own personal dynamics, our own relationships to intercede between us and the people that we're trying to lead or influence, what we often find is that we're making decisions before they get a chance to make decisions. We're changing ideas and opinions based on what we think they will think. And when we do that, there's no way we can be accurate. Let me zoom out a little further. Whether it's a political worldview, a religious worldview, an educational worldview, I find myself in deep conversations on a regular basis with people who have significantly more education than I do, meaning they've gone to school longer. They may have master's degrees, or many of the people, the circles that I run in, many of the people that I hang out with have PhDs. I don't. And as a result, there's a double-edged sword there. There are a lot of those people with PhDs, and I could give you names if you were interested, of people who say, he's one of the brightest guys that I know, even though he doesn't have the same formal education because he never stopped studying. And then there are others who would say, if you were really as bright as you think you are, you would have taken the time and applied the discipline to get the degrees. I also have some people who just look at me, and the first thing they want to know when I start to talk is, what school did you go to and what level did you accomplish? And when I can't tell them I went to Yale and I have a PhD, or I went to UT and I have a PhD, when I can't say that, they instantly dismiss everything that I have to say. They couldn't care less about the research. They couldn't care less about who I've studied under. They only want to know if I have accomplished the same level of degrees. I also have those in the circle that I run with who will say, I have an earned degree. Not an honorary degree, but an earned degree. That's a fascinating distinction unless you have an earned degree and you realize how much effort and expense goes into having an earned degree. But see, that's a worldview. An earned degree is a different worldview than a person who says, I didn't go to college, I've just never stopped studying. I didn't get a master's degree or a PhD or an MDiv, I just never stopped studying. And I've applied my life experiences. See, those are two totally different worldviews. One is highly academic, the other is practical knowledge, daily street smarts, and research. No quantifiable way to say how much you've actually learned or how much of it you've come to your own opinion, and that becomes the challenge. But do you see my distinction in worldview? One of those highly educated worldviews is that if you don't have the same education that I do, we can't talk on the same level. You don't have the same education that I do, I can't learn anything from you. And that becomes a challenge. Well, maybe you've been hired for a job that had a requirement of a specific amount of education or a specific amount of time on the job. I've been hired for jobs where I was told in the interview, I want you in this position, but then HR told them, he doesn't have a degree, you can't hire him. And it had to go all the way to the vice president of the company to be able to get an override to hire me for that position because I was capable and competent in that position I just didn't have the degree to say that I was ahead of time. Some of those people, based on policy, would have hired somebody with a degree but no experience, because to them the degree meant more than the experience. It's a worldview. It's a worldview that causes us to make judgments, to have opinions, to hold ideas, and even to behave in a certain way. Politically speaking, the same thing happens. We have a certain worldview about the way the economy should work, about the way immigration should work, about the way certain laws should work. Is marijuana legal or not? Should it be legal? These are all worldviews that taint our daily view of life. Good lenses or bad lenses, they filter the way we see the world. And as leaders, we've got to be able to step back from our own worldview so that we can assess the worldview of those that we're engaging with, whether we're leading them from the stage or we're leading them in an office space or we're leading them on the battlefield. We need to let our worldview set aside long enough to assess their worldview so that we can lead them where they need to go. If you're only leading from your own worldview, I hope it's the strongest one in the world. I hope that it's accurate, that it's based on truth, that it's based on firm foundations and values that are unshakable. But chances are you have a worldview that has some flaws in it because you're human, like all of us. And if that's the case, then I encourage you as a leader to step back for a moment and ask yourself, what worldview lens am I seeing this through? And am I superimposing my worldview on them? Am I selling from my own pocketbook? Am I judging them based on my wants, my needs, and my desires before I ask what they want, what they need, and what they desire? Am I superimposing my expectations and my values on them, or have I asked, what are your values in this area? Maybe what they're looking for as a client, as someone to be led, is something entirely different than what you would have been expecting. And if that's the case, you may talk yourself out of a deal because your own expectations are off target. Challenge you as a leader. Be willing, be able for a moment to set your worldview aside so that you can gain the understanding of the people that you want to lead. As John Maxwell says, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Lead with your heart, then ask for a hand. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day. Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.